Hey everybody. Today we're going to talk about the Dynaco ST-35, sort of. This here started as a 1959 Zenith console stereo chassis. Used to have a record player and an AM/FM attached to it. I bought two of these back in 2021 and decided I was going to build some stereos. So let's take a look at where these are at, because I haven't touched them in about a year and a half. And we'll talk about where they're going to go. The model of this one is 7D31. I replaced the filter capacitor with a 60/40/20 in the high voltage and a 100 microfarad for the cathode bypass cap of the EL84s. We've got the original power transformer. This one puts out 347 volts AC on either side. This one over here on the other amp puts out 368 on either side. I replaced the output transformer on both of these amps with Edcore 565s. We've got all brand new tube sockets. And then I added this socket here so that we can have a preamplification stage before it hits the phase inverter on each side and then onto the EL84s. Got speaker binding posts. RCA jacks will go right here. And then there's a volume control on the front. This one I still need to add a pilot light to. Might do that internally. I'm going to set you down here so I can flip the chassis over. So the inside of this has been completely gutted. I left the original terminal strips in place so that I can build a new circuit in there. The Dynaco ST-35 does not have a tube rectifier, but this chassis was punched for one, so I'm going to try to build around a GZ34. I've got the filaments, these two green wires. These two purple wires were labeled as accessory filaments, but they're higher than 6.3 volts. So I'm not sure what to do with those other than just leave them attached. Got your center taps for your filaments and your high voltage. This chassis required the tuner chassis to be plugged in because that's where the power switch was. So you've got one side of your primary here and the other side of your primary over here on this plug. I've added a power switch, it's not yet wired in. There's the electrolytic that was replaced. Let me show you the original schematic and let's talk about where I'm deviating in the power supply. So the original schematic for the, where is it? Dynaco ST-35. Shows your power transformer feeding into a pair of silicone diodes, solid state rectifier. They forgot to show the first stage filter cap, but that's where the 60 microfarad goes. That goes through a 50 ohm resistor into the 40 microfarad, which goes through a 6.8K resistor into the 20 microfarad. Now on mine, because I have an extra stage of preamplification, I've got a 1K resistor there that goes to a 47 microfarad that will feed my 12AU7 preamp. So that's not shown on here. The other thing that I'm doing in mine, instead of using a 50 ohm resistor, I've installed a triad choke. It is the model C24X. Let me zoom in on it here for you. Have to bear with me. So it's a C24X, it's a 1 Henry at 240 milliamps, and it also has a 50 ohm resistance. This will beef up the power supply just a little bit, make it a little smoother, hopefully take out some hum if there is any. Let's go ahead and just fly over this chassis here so you can see what it looks like before any real work has been done, and then we'll move on to the other one that I started a while back. This is going to provide a really nice basis to build a clean looking amplifier. All right, so let's move over to this other chassis, and we're going to talk about what I did right and what I did wrong. Let's start off with what I did wrong. I wasn't sure what the maximum filter capacitance was for a GZ34, and the original filter capacitor that was in this amplifier had an 80 microfarad first stage, which would have exceeded the maximum filter capacitance. So what I did, I ran the high voltage to this 10 microfarad capacitor as a first stage, and then following the schematic, I ran that positive side into this 50 ohm resistor, which then ran down to the 60 microfarad first stage of the filter can capacitor. And then that fed the choke, which then fed the 40 microfarad stage, and so on and so forth. You can see I've got the first stage through this 1K resistor feeding this 47 microfarad 500 volt, and then that runs down this white wire and will eventually feed the plates of the preamp. So in the ensuing 18 months, I've educated myself quite a bit, and when I looked at this project with fresh eyes today, I understood that this 10 microfarad capacitor is not necessary, and this 50 ohm resistor is actually redundant to the choke. So I'm going to remove these first, and then I'm going to move the red wire that's coming off of the rectifier over here to the 60 microfarad over there, and just feed it in the way that's called for on the schematic. I'm not sure exactly where my voltages are going to end up. I suspect that these power transformers are a little bit hotter than what was used in the ST-35. I've got to do some more research today. I may need to put a Zener diode in series with the high voltage tap to ground, which is not a big deal, but it's something that I'm already considering. So let's talk about the good on this amp, the work that's already been done. I ran these filament strings throughout the entire amplifier and kept each channel separated. Let's go back up to the top and run down the other side. You'll notice I did not twist them. I've done a lot of experimenting in different amplifiers, including much higher gain than this, and have found that the difference between twisting and running parallel, keeping them close to the chassis, are pretty minimal. And then you can see there's a pilot light up here in the corner. I have wired the secondary side of the output transformer already with an 8 ohm, and then the 4 ohm and 16 ohm loads are just heat shrinked off in case you ever want to change it. I have not wired the primary side with all the ultra linear taps. That's going to be coming soon, and then I'll be populating the terminal strips. That's probably all there is to say about these for now. Just beware that there's always the possibility of mistakes on schematics. I pulled up the layout diagram for this morning, and it shows the proper connections. But if all you had to go by was the schematic, well, you would be making some guesses like I did. But things are on track now. I'll make some further videos as these progress. Thank you.